All right, so when you think of Halloween, you probably think of, costumes, and the girls dress up like princesses, and the guys get to dress up like Power Rangers. You also think about all the candy that you're getting as you go house to house, and all the tricks and fun you get to have messing with your neighbors. So what I'm going to talk about today is the history of Halloween, because most people don't understand it. They don't know anything. All they think about is the candy. So and this is a video that I found online that explains the history of
When most people
Halloween.
think of Halloween, they think of trick-or-treating, parades, bobbing for apples, and other family-friendly activities. But bet you didn't know the true story behind the ancient origins of Halloween. It all goes back some 2,000 years to the ancient Celtic festival known as Samhain, celebrated on November 1st. On the night before Samhain, people believed that the dead returned as ghosts. They would leave food and wine on their doorsteps to keep roaming spirits at bay, and wear masks when they left the house so they would be mistaken for fellow ghosts. The Christian church turned Samhain into All Saints' Day, or All Hallows, in the 8th century. The night before became All Hallows' Eve, later shortened to Halloween. You've heard of trick-or-treating on Halloween, but what about souling or guising? All three of these traditions originated in medieval Britain. On All Souls' Day, November 2nd, the needy would beg for pastries known as soul cakes. In return, they would pray for people's dead relatives. This was called souling. In the medieval Halloween tradition of guising, young people would dress up in costume and accept food, wine, money, and other offerings in exchange for singing, reciting poetry, or telling jokes. In 19th century America, Irish and Scottish immigrants revived these old traditions. The result was trick-or-treating. At first, it was much more about the tricks, in the form of pranks and hijinks, than the treats. It wasn't until the 1950s that the custom took on its current family-friendly, kid-centered form. Today, Halloween is big business, with U.S. consumers spending more than $2.5 billion on costumes annually. Add in the candy, and it's estimated that Americans spend up to $6 billion on Halloween each year, making it the second most commercial holiday after Christmas. So whether you're a fan of tricks, treats, or trivia, there's a bit of Halloween history. We bet you didn't know!
Okay, so like the video said, it was originally named Samhain after an ancient Celtic festival, and they considered October 31st the last day of the year. So they believed that it was when the land of the dead and the land of the living, the boundary was just gone, so that ghosts could come up to our world. So their celebration were the sacred bonfires. They burnt their crops and animals as sacrifices to their gods. And they wore costumes like the animal heads and skins, which this is actually an example of one of them. It's a pig. And the main part of the face was a part of a wild pig, and then they added the horns and everything. So they took a bunch of different animals and combined it. And they believed that they could also tell each other's fortunes, and that the women were able to figure out the name and the features of their future husband by playing, like looking in the fire and just being able to tell, oh, I'm going to marry this man someday, and he's going to be blonde with blue eyes, and it's going to be great. They were conquered in 43 AD by the Romans, and the Romans ruled them for 400 years, and the Romans changed the traditions of the culture. So the two Roman festivals were combined with Samhain. One of them was named Feralia, October 31st, and November 1st was called Panana. And Panana is the goddess of fruit and trees from the Romans. And that's where they believe that bobbing for apples became a tradition because her symbol was an apple. And so a lot of the Romans did different activities that involved apples, which is where bobbing for apples came from. So Before it was called All Saints' Day, it was actually called All Souls' Day, and Pope Boniface IV dedicated this holiday to the Christian martyrs, or the people who were killed because of their religion. So in 1000 AD, Pope Gregory III changed it to All Saints' Day in order to include all of the saints who had also died because of their beliefs. And it was also believed by historians to be the church's attempt to replace the Celtic festival in order to go along with the church's beliefs as well. And then it started to become referred to as All Hallows, and October 1st became All Hallows Eve. Now, Halloween in America, it was more common in the southern colonies because of the Protestant religion in the north. And the Irish and English immigrants, when they came over to America, Halloween spread all throughout the country. And the Irish actually brought over traditions of where they would carve out turnips because they didn't have pumpkins. So they carved out turnips and they put the hot embers into the turnip, and they would use it so that their dead relatives could find their way back to the land of the dead. And now when they moved into America, that's where you get your jack-o'-lantern from, because it was harder to grow turnips over here. And Americans began visiting houses dressed in costumes in order to ask for the food, like they mentioned in the video. So they would ask for food and candy and donations. Now, modern Halloween, trick-or-treating, family-friendly, costumes, and actually a fourth of all candy in the United States is used for Halloween. I'm excited.